going through.
Okay, we're live.
We are, and good morning and welcome to Small Business Chat. Thank you very much for joining our live stream that's talking today about how to pitch your services and win more clients. Good morning, folks. We have Karen, my co-host here. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
And we have our guest and expert, Andy Bargery from Klaxon Marketing. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us this morning, Andy.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Well, we obviously have to have an expert when it comes to the pitch process, because Karen and I were laughing as we started. We thought this was going to be a really good topic to cover, but it's been quite a while since Karen and I have done a very formal bid or tender process, because we used to work in travel, so we used to have RFPs, which is requests for proposals at government level.
We just had to Google that again, what that meant, didn't we?
It's been that long. So if you're a small business, you may be asked, obviously, as you're growing your businesses, particularly if you're selling your services, to provide some form of proposal. And it can really vary in size, from sort of smaller costing projects, which just needs a basic outline of the service that you're going to provide, up to sort of more formalized bids and tenders. But Andy, I mean, it's just so fascinating, the chat that we've just had beforehand, so I'm so glad we're kicking off. Andy, tell us a little bit more about, well, so much to tell us about you, what you do, so fire away, give us a little introduction about your good self and your experience. And
okay, perfect. I feel like there's something missing from the start of this show, which is a kind of, I've got my tea, which is your normal start, isn't it? I've got my tea.
Yes, so you can come again. He read the brief. It's a chat.
There you go. Lesson number one, actually read the brief. There you go. So thank you for having me on the show, Christelle and Karen. It's nice to be here. Just to kind of briefly introduce myself then, is so Andy Bargery. I actually run Agency Squared, as well as having Klaxon, which is my consultancy. And I've spent the last 20 or so years primarily in agency land, working for big Omnicom-owned agencies, and then more recently for my own consultancy. And that's primarily been working in client service. But when you own your own business, you do everything, of course, right? So you do client service, and you do the new biz, and you do the finance and all that sort of jazz. I haven't got to tell you guys what goes into running your own business. And then the last couple of years, I set up Agency Squared as a way initially to create a community, a forum for people running agencies and small creative businesses, to provide that peer support, because I didn't find that when I was really running my agency. And I was looking for a place to go where I could talk to someone else like Christelle and go, bloody hell, I can't fix this problem. What have you done to solve that?
And celebrate our wins.
Pardon?
And celebrate our wins. I love that.
And celebrate our wins, of course. Yeah. So that's why I created Agency Squared, and it's kind of evolved into this bigger concern, I suppose, where I now look after and work with agencies, because I can't leave agency behind, because I love that world so much. But equally, I work with marketeers who are client side, because quite often what I hear from client side marketeers is, I need to find an agency that can help me with my SEO, or my current agency is not really doing what I need, but I can't find somebody else. And when I look at the agency community, guess what? They all look the same. I can't tell one from the other. It's like some big custard soup of agencies that all tell me they are a client services expert that is a partner for their clients, and yada, 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 yada. So that's kind of where I now sit, is I help agencies and I help clients to create marketing partnerships.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, a lot of the conversations that we've had on Small Business Chat, if you're new to us, if you're going through, or if you've watched our previous shows or chats, whatever they are, I don't know what to call them now. They're both. But we spend a lot of time trying, I think, from our frustration of somebody coming to myself or Karen saying, oh, we need your services, but then not really providing the brief, not providing us a clear, detailed explanation or breakdown of what their objectives are, what their budget is. So what's brilliant is that you're able to work with those businesses in the first place to be able to go, what is it that you want? And we were laughing just before this live stream, and I call it, it is the Jerry Maguire situation, where you're tearing your hair out going, well, just give me more information, like, help me to help you. Like, it really is that push pull. And a lot of us, there's so much that agencies aren't doing properly in terms of responding, but equally, it's both sides, isn't it? So I suppose the first question is, you brought up a very good discussion point just before we went live, but I'd love to hear you say it again. But there are almost different levels, aren't there, of pitching that a business might want in terms of price points. So could you explain that a little bit for us as well?
Yeah, well, we were talking about public sector procurement largely there. And I think it's important to understand there's a very different approach between public sector and private sector as to the kind of information, the kind of process you might go through. But equally, both public and private sector organizations are going to want to see similar sorts of information. So there you go. There's a bit of lack of clarity there, isn't there? But if we look specifically at public sector, when the public sector procurement officer or any officer within a local council or central government is trying to buy some services, there are kind of three price points. Generally up to £5,000 over 3 years, I should have said earlier, Christelle. Then the officer can make a direct appointment. So they can come to you and say, I need some help with this launch. Can you do some PR around launching this product or service or whatever it is? And if it's up to 5,000, then they can just award that directly to you. If the contract's up to £25,000 in value, then they will need to get 3 competitive pitches. But that can be through a very targeted, refined procurement process. When you get over £25,000 of value of the contract, then it has to go onto Contracts Finder and be published publicly so anybody anywhere can see and tender for that work. So it's quite interesting when you're tendering for public sector procurement work, public sector work, to think about those different price points. But I want to go back a little bit, Christelle. You were talking about briefing as well. And that's a really interesting point, because I did a piece of research with the marketing meetup where we asked clients and agency side marketeers, what are the most important things in enabling you to be able to deliver your service or to get a result, marketing performance? And agencies had the brief as the most important piece, whereas clients saw the brief as about 4th or 5th most important part of the process. So there's a real disconnect there between what client-side marketeers think agencies need and what agencies actually need. And we know we need the information. We can't answer your challenge if we don't have enough information. So going back to your Jerry Maguire, help me to help you is a great starting point when it comes to a pitch or a procurement process, is to really make sure that you understand the client's challenges and that they understand them as well.
And I mean, the reason why I think that's such an important aspect as to where the differences lie in the understanding and the prioritizing. The reason I was trying to bring up the price points as well is just, sorry to jump around, but just to almost clarify that you could be a small business and think, well, I won't go for that type of sector because they're too big. And actually, what I loved about what you had just said was, this might open up some opportunities for you that you might not have considered because you think you're too small. You're not. And so maybe from a perspective like that, absolutely, it would be really good to see you know, because it's these types of contracts that help you break through and get onto the next level of business sometimes. So I think that sometimes we put that barrier upon ourselves going, I can't possibly go for that type of business or that type of sector. But so that's really good to know. Now, Andy, like, I loved seeing the differences between the two. What do you think the key challenges are for agencies? Because I know that where we were tearing our hair out. So perhaps if you can explain what you find from both sides, like what are the key challenges that you find appear on both sides?
Okay, well, let's look at it from a client side point of view first of all. So when clients look at agencies, it really is difficult to tell an agency or agencies apart, because quite often we have very vanilla positioning. And we talk about being a full service agency that's a partner to our clients and so on and so forth. Award winning is that lovely one, you know, but we don't actually say, many of us don't actually say, we work with travel sector clients, we help them solve their media relations challenges, and we've done this for 10 years and generate these results. So it's not really clear to clients what it is that agencies actually offer. So agencies need to get their positioning right and their proposition. What do we do for who and why should they care? So I think from a client perspective, the most difficult thing is identifying suitable candidates that they can work with, that they can hire to solve their challenges. So as agencies, we need to make sure that our positioning is clearer. And then I think the second thing is lots of clients, they actually aren't used to procuring agency services. They don't have a refined or defined process, particularly if they're in a small or medium-sized enterprise where they haven't got procurement specialists there. This is a can of worms that they're unfamiliar with. So we need to guide them through what it is they should be looking for from an agency, help them through that process. And if, as an agency, that means we qualify them out the process, we give them some advice, we point them in the right direction, we send them somewhere else, then that equally is good advice. And Christelle, I know you're great at doing that sort of stuff, is pointing people in the right direction rather than necessarily trying to grab some extra fees. And I think that's really important. So from a client perspective, then making sure that it's clear the difference between the agencies, so their positioning, and making sure that the clients have a process and understand how to appoint agencies and understand the different disciplines. What people can do for me is really, really important. From an agency point of view, I think process, having a really clear process for what are the steps that I go through in this sales process, my sales journey or buying journey, to use that marketing terminology. How am I going to get people from that initial inquiry through to being successful in my pitch or submitting a proposal? How am I going to qualify out those that aren't quite right? Because the last thing you want to do is to really win some business from a client that hasn't got enough money really to achieve their objectives, doesn't know how to work with an agency. You don't want to be the first agency to work with a client because you're going to be educating them on how agencies work, and that's just a headache. So you're looking for sophisticated clients, really. And I think having your team in place so that when you find a suitable opportunity, then you're able to actually really go for it in a structured, well-managed way. So, for example, what I'm talking about that is get organized early. So quite often what we do is, because we're madly servicing clients, we get an opportunity to pitch or an RFP. And what happens? How often do we sit on it for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month? And then there's a week to go for the deadlines. Oh, I better get onto that proposal. And then I start to read the brief. It's like, oh no, I don't quite know whether I've got all the right information here. Have I got time to go back and ask questions? And that is so often the case. And you get these last minute panics from agencies a day before the deadline. Can I just check I've got enough, and that you get questions coming in. And by then I already know it's too late, because the chances of you putting together a really good pitch or proposal the day before the deadline, not going to happen, people. Not going to happen. Get yourself organized, get started early, because you can bet your bottom dollar that your competition will be there the day before asking questions. Whereas at that point, you've submitted your proposal and you're already on to the next one. And so that, I think, is really important, getting yourself organized early with a proper structure, getting your team in place.
I think there's a couple of things I picked up on there as well. We were talking about smaller businesses being a bit shy about going for some of these bigger contracts and that, or not having team members in place. But there's a case then for collaboration, isn't there? So finding the right people that you could bring together on a pitch in order to deliver that particular job.
I couldn't agree more with you on that, Karen. Actually, that was the nature of my agency, Klaxon, was that we were a collective of experts, freelancers that worked together on projects. And I really like that approach. The only caveat to that is just check with the client that they're happy with that. Because on many occasions I've had clients say, no, I want the agency to have it all in-house, because then they can manage the resourcing properly. And I haven't got to worry about lots of disparate freelancers working together and perhaps not being as lined up or joined up as I need. So be careful if you're taking that approach. Qualify the client in early on, because you could waste a lot of time if they're not happy with that approach.
Yeah, so it's about transparency as well, isn't it, in that? And I mean, we speak to a lot of kind of purpose-led businesses as well. And I guess you were saying about making sure that your message is right. We do this, who for, and what are the benefits and results? Why should they care? I think that's really important in this day and age when people are looking for other purpose-led businesses or, values, basically, employing people on their values as well, not just the skills. So I think
I think that's important from a chemistry point of view. Do our values align? But again, be a bit careful with that, because if you're going down particularly public sector procurement, then those decisions aren't made on values. It's made on value in the procurement officer's mind. So what's the cheapest way I can solve this challenge? So they don't care whether you've got the same values or not. They just want to know what's the unit cost of solving the problem.
Yeah, well, that's really good. That's, I think, really good for people to know, because obviously a lot of that is, when you work as a small business with another small business, is often based on that, isn't it? But so it's good to know in the public sector that's quite different. But just on my last point, I just thought, well, actually, one of the great things about going for something like public sector is there's a fixed cost. You know what the budget is, and you can work within that. Oftentimes when you're approached by a client as a small business, they go, I don't know what my budget is, you just tell me. And then you do all that work, and then they say, no, I haven't got the money.
Yes. Oh, I know. The budget question is always a headache, isn't it? And my advice to any agency is, if the client hasn't got a budget, they don't have the ability to hire you, because they haven't thought enough about what they need. So if they can't give you a budget, even a guideline, don't bother. Find another prospective client, because you could waste an extraordinary amount of time chasing clients that aren't really qualified well enough for you. It's going back to that old, if you heard of the BANT methodology, it's for sales qualification. So BANT stands for budget. Have they got any money? So B is budget. A is authority. Have they got the ability to sign off on your appointment? N is need. Have they got a defined need? And T is timescale. Have they got a deadline by when they need to have solved their problem? So if you can't take them through BANT, and they don't qualify in as a lead you should be chasing, because you probably won't get any work out of them. And particularly on budget as well, if you're selling some services, your idea of what value is very different, or could be very different, to that prospective client. So you might find that you're putting a proposal in for a 10 grand a month PR retainer, and they had 1 grand a month in their mind, and you're poles apart. So finding a happy medium there is pretty unlikely.
And you can qualify even if you are a small business. I mean, it's really interesting to see. It's just really the scale of what you're working at, because Karen, what you were saying about, for example, the budget. I mean, you could be transparent on your website about the start of your services or your projects or whatever it may be. If you're putting that on your website, for me, it's a clarifier. And whenever I book in a discovery call, I'm asking you to book in what service are you interested in with the price, and I actually ask, do you have budget, before we have that call. And it was a great question. I mean, it was a business mentor that actually gave me that advice. And straight away, it's like, if they say no, that's not a bad thing. It's like, well, here's all of the free talks and resources that I offer to help you to get on your way, and when you're ready, let's have the discovery call. But it's the same as what you're saying, Andy, is that I think it's so important to qualify, because it's exhausting sometimes being on that new business hamster wheel, and it is juggling everything. So you have to qualify whether or not they are right for you. And like you say, procurement is different to the values of the company, or what the CEO might be doing, or whatever they might be saying on their website. So procurement's looking for, like, what's the return? Can you actually deliver? And then you might have this very wonderful need of community. It's local council. We're doing our work, or we're doing something for this charity. But they actually need to see the direct link of what it is that you're producing. And that's the strength in your pitch and your proposal. So it's really important to identify and understand the both, because I've seen some really wonderfully creative agency work, and we've done it ourselves. I worked in all sorts of agencies. We've been super creative, and they've had the wow factor, but somewhere along the line the questions weren't being asked, and they've still been, you could have won that pitch, but they've ended up being a problematic client agency relationship, because you didn't answering and you're not answering the right questions. And that was a great comment actually on our LinkedIn thread to promote this activity. And we had some great insights about asking the right questions. Don't be scared. And is that something that you find a lot of agencies do? Do you think that they don't take advantage of asking questions up front about what's required? Are they doing it enough?
Oh, so with the agencies that are in my community that I help with through this process, I pretty much insist that they take as much time as they can to talk to prospective clients, because that's where you start to build rapport. You start to build a relationship. You can start to kind of tease out extra insights that your competition hasn't got. You can start to seed ideas and get some initial feedback. You can learn what the client's tried before and hasn't worked, so you don't come in with that approach in your proposal. So I think for everyone that works with me, there has to be that step before you pitch or submit your proposal, where you engage with your clients and you ask questions, you build rapport. But I think on some occasions, if you're going back to public sector, there won't be that opportunity to build a rapport, to talk to people directly. In fact, if you have a conversation with the officer buying the services, you might then get excluded from that process. But there's normally an open forum where you can ask questions online, and everyone involved in that process then gets to see the responses to those questions. So super important to ask questions.
Yeah. So you also, what I love is that you've got 2 events that are coming up to help agencies really understand the pitch process. So you've got the art of the pitch that's coming up, and these are both in November. And then you've got one on communication skills for that client. I was going through the overview of them, and I thought so important in how we're communicating ourselves. And they're both in November. And if you're a small business, if you register through, well, we've provided the links, so we'll provide the links in the show notes. But if you use the code SmallBizChat, you have 15% off. Thank you so much for your generosity there. Really value that. But do you want to tell us a little bit more about those 2? This is coming up in November, so this is going to be perfect. If you're really looking to ramp up your 2022, definitely take advantage of this. But do you want to explain the outline of both so that they know a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so the art of the pitch is a day-long session I run it with my friend Anthony Tazgold. If anyone's come across Taz, he's a super intelligent guy who's probably spent about, I don't want to age him, but I'm going to say at least 30 years in advertising agencies. And we do this session where we look at the whole process for how to really give yourselves the best chance at being successful when it comes to pitching. And it's a really interactive session where we actually start off by looking at what not to do. So here's all the mistakes people make. So don't make these. And then we talk about things like storytelling, using behavioral economics. We call it the bestie approach. And that's where we look at how you can actually give yourselves the best chance. And then we pull up 2 briefs, a consumer and a B2B brief. And we use that as a way to actually practice some of the techniques that we've learned during the first half of the course. And we end off the day with an actual pitch presentation. So we put people into teams and we go around trying to actually utilize some of the skills that we've taught during the morning. And it's a really interactive, fun session. Taz is great because he's used to helping agencies pitch for kind of, £1 million plus projects. I'm a marketing and a PR person, and we know PR budgets are smaller. So I'm used to working at slightly smaller end of the market. So we've got quite a nice blend.
Creative budgeting.
Creative budgeting, yes, exactly.
That's good though, because I think you can learn things from both ends, can't you? You can always learn from bigger ones and take something like that and adapt it to what you could use when pitching for a smaller client as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are the same steps, the same disciplines that will help you to actually formulate a really effective pitch presentation. So that's the art of the pitch. And then the other one, confident communication, is we've got 2 sessions actually. One is online, so it's on a Zoom environment, and that is how do you deliver effective presentations when you're in front of a screen like this? How can you be confident and skilled at engaging your audience, even though really you're looking at a camera, the computer screen? And then we do a similar one, which is actually more, how do you do that in an offline environment? So good old-fashioned speaking opportunities type stuff. And those sessions are with my pal, John Torrens. John is a phenomenal guy. He's a stand-up comedian who teaches confident communication skills to introverts. And he's really funny. So both of those sessions are fun, interactive, and people leave just feeling more confident that they can stand up and deliver a presentation. And that's key for pitching, but it's also really important just for general business skills, isn't it? As you're growing your career, if you're growing a business, you're going to have to be pitching, presenting all the time. So get good at those things, I think, is really important.
Do you also cover, because we talk about sort of pitching, and I've just sort of had this idea of like Dragon's Den in my mind or something like that, or sort of, you know, pitching for investment. You know, there's a lot of social enterprises I know, or say charities and stuff like that. Would that cover it as well for people like that?
It's a very similar discipline. The art of the pitch is primarily focused on helping agencies to sell their services, but I think there are some key skills in there that could definitely relate to those pitching for investment or just trying to sell an idea, which is something we have to do all the time, isn't it? But certainly from the confident communications skill perspective, that would help anyone that has to do a presentation, basically. From those that are totally terrified, and we've had a few of those that come on and they go away and they're like, oh, I actually feel like I can do this now. I don't feel afraid of delivering a presentation. To those that are a little bit more outgoing and confident, just want to kind of refine their technique a little bit. Look at perhaps how to introduce humor and other parts to their presentation. So we kind of cover both bases.
Yeah. So you could even take away from that if you're delivering a masterclass or something online or a workshop or something like that, you could get tips to help you through that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. John's a great guy. He's really funny, actually, and he's got a lovely way of kind of disarming people's nerves and getting them to open up and just deliver good presentations. It's a pleasure to work with him, actually, and with Taz as well on the art of the pitch. I like to find someone that's really great that I can bring in to help me deliver these sessions, and I found 2 stars there, really.
Fantastic.
Oh, amazing. Sounds like great value and great insights to have from those. Thank you so much. I mean, Karen, did you have any other further questions?
I think there was, we had in one of the questions here about your agency squared community.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit through that.
That's basically it's at the moment it's a private Facebook group. And if you are the owner of a small agency or a senior manager there, then you're more than welcome to join. It's completely free. And the idea with the community, as Christelle knows, because you're in the community, aren't you, is I'm trying to foster collaborations and relationships and support for each other. And I get a real buzz when I see people working together who've just met through Agency Squared. It's happened quite a few times now, where people are finding work and they're building their networks. And it's just, for me, just trying to engage that group and to get people talking and building those relationships. And I use that for a great source of leads as well. So when I'm looking to hire agency services for my client-side clients, the first place I go to is my community. And I put out a lead alert, and then often I find enough candidates from that community to take forward to my client-side's clients. So from that point of view, if you're just looking for leads, you could join for that as well. But if you want more support, want more community, want to meet more Christelles, then come along and join the group. It's sometimes busy, sometimes it's a little bit of a
selling point, Andy.
There's not a selling point. Okay.
So is that Agency Squared? If you just do on Facebook Agency
Squared, yeah. Or if you go to agencysquared.co.uk, you can find details of the community, the training courses, and all the other stuff that I do to help small agency owners to grow, really. Or as I often say, survive, thrive, and exit is what I'm looking to do. Yeah.
It's super helpful, and honestly, it's really helped me out as well when I've had a question, or when somebody's asking. It's just so lovely, especially when we're doing this on our own, to have other brains and sort of helpful people, and actually, things that we might not agree on. It's just lovely to hear another perspective. I remember we were having certain questions and just seeing different experiences of people going, absolutely, I would not do that. Actually, I would totally do is why it works. It's really interesting.
Well, there was a question the other day about whether to put packages together. I think it was a social media or an SEO agency. Should I put packages together and put it out on my website? And then I got responses, or there were responses in the comments from bigger agencies, others that were doing packaging and price packages and stuff like that. And it was great to see that support within the community. I really love that, actually.
It's brilliant. No, thank you so
definitely
much.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Good.
So we'll also put in, we've got Andy's contact details. If you have any questions, please post them into the comments, so we'll check through. And also, don't forget, we're streaming this into YouTube, so please subscribe if you liked this or future content that we're coming up with. We've got quite a host of videos now. I'm getting super proud of this. But again, it's stuff like Andy that make it, just absolutely superb for us, because it's those insights. I've already learned what not to do and where people are going wrong. And a lot of the times not asking the right questions about the client and how to fit their head around them.
Definitely.
Also not positioning themselves strongly enough. And we talk about that a lot with branding, don't we, Karen? Like, we're big branding fans. So once you've got that core proposition, values, purpose aligned, how you're bringing that up front. So thank you so much for sort of like helping us join the dots.
Oh, it's been brilliant. I feel like I'm just starting as well. I could do probably 3 more or 4 more of these sessions and have a great time with you guys.
To get you in again. Well, absolutely. We're trying to keep them bite-sized and manageable and just enough for like your cup of tea. But yeah, I think, we definitely have to get you on again and have a look at some different areas where people will need your help and expertise, for sure.
Anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, ladies.
Take care, everyone, and we will see you next week on Wednesday at 10 o'clock. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.